Are you an entrepreneur or ready to become a boss? Welcome to Hawaii Boss, the business podcast made in Hawaii, where you will hear from island movers and shakers on who they are and their impact on our state. And now, step into the office of your host for Hawaii Boss, David Pettijohn.
Aloha, Hawaii Boss podcast crew listening in out there, wherever you do, you can watch into, because, we've always got guests on. We've also got our live spot that we're still trying to get some kinks out and some steady dates, but we're looking for visitors to come in and meet with us directly in our studio in Kaka'ako. But we're really excited today through Zoom call, our lovely technology that has helped Hawaii Boss grow and do some amazing things is our friend Tom Driskill. He's here again, sort of a unicorn, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But Tom, welcome.
Yeah, Dave, good to be here with you.
Now, it's not the best introduction, a unicorn. People are like, what? Okay, what are you talking about, Tom Driskill? A special, very special, unique set of skills. You have those movies out there. I have a unique set of skills that I need, but you bring to the table, and a healthcare coordinator currently helping to get the new veterans home up and going and coordinated and ready to go. But you also have a long career. I love this one. You're the favorite. Maybe your job, chief executive officer of Do To Do LLC.
Oh, that was one. a lot of different, varied, interesting experiences there. Yeah, that was 10 years with an LLC on the side for my son, and he's a media nut, and he had a lot of fun with YouTube and making a lot of movies, and that he had a lot of people working with him that were doing a lot of crazy stunts and things. So it was good to have a little bit of a veil between the crazy stunts and the rest of me. So, an LLC serves a good purpose in that regard anyway.
Right. Yeah. Just because of, if, even though your son too, if maybe he gets hurt, well, it's okay. But again, at least it's not coming back on me. Or again, that was that thing going on. There's been so many different things in media. That's interesting that you've entertained that with your son, and I see. Yeah, it's from your position in Hawaii, it seems like you've been able to see lots of the world. But before you got to Hawaii, let's talk about that. You have an illustrious. Your current. You have a veteran. Tell us a little bit about your military service and.
Sure. Well, I 29 years in the military, and I had a lot of opportunities, and I was a combat medic in Vietnam. I commanded a battalion, a medical battalion. I commanded a medical brigade, and I was chief of staff for a number of different hospitals, to include U.S. Army Hospital Berlin, 3 years here at Tripler with the Pacific region, and then Walter Reed Army Medical Center with the North Atlantic region. Right. And I retired as executive officer to the Army Surgeon General. So I had a lot of fun. In the midst of all that, I got married back 44 years ago.
Okay, and congratulations.
That was the best thing we did, and we're still together here in Hawaii. And we had 3 boys so along the way. So that's the positive part of my life, really. But in 1973, I'd never been to Hawaii, but I was on my way back to the mainland from Vietnam, and I had a one-day layover, and I went over to Fort DeRussy, and I rented a BOQ room for $5.
Right.
and a car, and I drove around the island, and oh man, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Right.
You go to Hawaii, I mean, that's another universe. I don't mean it.
Right. Like, what is this? There's water, and there's a breeze through the air, and there's not chiggers and.
Yeah, I mean, no snakes. Whoa, name it. Anyway, I loved it, but it took me a number of years to get back. I finally came back in 92 as, again, the chief of staff deputy commander for Tripler. And that was a marvelous experience because we expanded out across the Pacific, and we're doing medical teams across all of the compact nations as well as our U.S. territories. And I had that opportunity to travel extensively throughout Asia, and had agents of mine working with me that we covered all the embassies across Asia. So that was a broadening experience. But while I was here, I was deeply involved in the Healthcare Association of Hawaii. Mm-hmm. Rich Myers was the president CEO at that time, and he has passed, but he was a great leader. And they came. I left I came in 92. I left in 95, and back in Washington, the folks sought me out from Hawaii and asked me to apply for to be the first president and CEO of the Hawaii Health Systems Corporation. That was at that time a new corp, being formed in '96. And it was a year, and I interviewed, and my wife and I came out here, spent a week, and said, well, we don't want to leave the military because we have a very good shot at being a general officer.
Right.
And they offered me the job, though, and we said, well, we'll do anything to get back to Hawaii. So I exited after 29 years. And that was a great experience. A whole number of people who some have moved on. Diane Plotz was the chair of the board from Hemmeter Corporation. Roger Drew, who used to be HP Hawaii Pacific, was the chair of the recruiting committee, and Art Usajima, Gary Kajiwara, you name it, just a lot of great people. So it was a wonderful building experience. One of the special things we did during that time was in Hilo. And you've been in and out of there and around for a while, so you may remember when you're coming up the hill from downtown, and the new Hilo Hospital was built in 85.
Right, you go up Wainui Avenue up there. Yeah.
And you're going up there, and when the new hospital was built around the old one, which was cracked in half by an earthquake, they didn't.
There was lava tubes and things.
You got it. They didn't redirect any of the utilities or anything. They just built a hospital kind of on an L shape around it. And then they put the long-term care facility and the dialysis unit on the other side. So it was a complete perfect U with this horrible, ugly, moss-covered thing in the center. And I tried every way in the world to get rid of that thing. It was expensive because the utilities were underneath it. It was very expensive to drop it. And it couldn't come up with a solution, but finally we opened a VA clinic in Hilo, and Patsy Mink and Senator Dan Inouye came over for that opening. And I had a little artist rendition of what a VA hospital would look like. And I showed it to them and said, that's what we need to put in place of that ugly monstrosity over there. And of course they bought into that and did some.
How long before that meeting did you get that ready? This is a leadership. We also find out about leadership because a little bit of preparation.
It was pretty short notice.
You're trying to sway things. You're trying to move some things, and sometimes you have to use the timing, appropriately to address the situation. So, this was your shot.
It was pretty short notice. The guy had somebody whoop it up in about 2 days for me. And, it was worth a couple of pastrami sandwiches. As we're sitting there in the new VA clinic, which was in our medical office building for Hilo Medical Center. But what I learned then is VA construction, VCON, is very much like military construction, MILCON. Takes a long time. I mean, it takes a long time. 15 years would not be unusual. And I didn't know if I was going to live 15 years at that rate. And that's when the state veterans home idea came up.
Okay.
And as we pursued it and it evolved, and a friend of mine that I'd served with in Europe was running the homes in Texas, I went over to see and learn there. And
early 2000s, we talking?
2004. And we concluded we had to size it right. Sizing was very difficult because there were a lot of ambitious ideas, but you got to be careful. You build a white elephant and then you got to live with it. So we did the right analysis and we sized it at 95 beds, and we built that. And Avalon ultimately was selected to be the contractor. And it was hard for them. It was their first state veterans home. It was hard to get it jump started, hard to get it going. But once it got going, until the pandemic, everything was very smooth. It became a very profitable operation, and we were very happy with it. The reason I mention that, I spend that time on it, is I left HHSC in December 31st of 2009, and I went to work for it's called the VA Pacific Island Healthcare System. That's our local VA system. We don't have a VA hospital here. We have a joint venture between the VA and the military.
Yeah, it's a joint hospital.
You got it. So Tripler is our VA hospital here, and we have embedded specialists and wards, and it's a nice joint venture there.
Right.
But we do have a lot of VA clinics all over Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam.
The CBOC.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, community-based
outpatient clinic.
That's been a great push. I think I've seen great stuff in Washington State that really can extend out those clinics to people where they can't get the VA services at their local hospital because they don't know about it, how to activate their services. So those clinics are really like a lifeline for veterans.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's grown often. I mean, we see sometimes, and I'll just quickly comment on October 5th, there was a Senate Affairs, Veterans Senate Affairs field hearing here. And Mazie Hirano chaired it. The Secretary of the VA came, a number of others, a gentleman I worked for and with, Ron Hahn, testified. And there's a lot of great things that have happened in the last 30 years. Sometimes we don't always focus, and the Star Advertiser doesn't always focus on the accomplishments. Rather, they sometimes will tend to dwell on one or two chronic complainers, and that is often a diversion of reality. Reality is, when I came here in '92, I just got out of the military. I went to get my service disability determination rating. And the VA here in Hawaii was this little clinic down in the downtown in the federal building. I mean, on one floor,
Right.
This little clinic.
So it wasn't really reaching out to veterans and servicing veterans at all. The current apparatus.
Holy cow. I mean, today they've got, when I say CBOC, I don't mean just one doctor. I mean, I'm talking about multiple patient care teams, PACs, behavioral health teams, as well as primary care in Kona and Hilo. Here just opened a brand new one in Kaneohe, one out in Kapolei right now. Of course, Kahului, we're over on Kauai, and we see just Maui, American Samoa, big CBOC, Guam, big CBOC, CBOC extended, and Saipan, plus satellite CBOCs on Lanai and Molokai. Wow. And all of that growth has taken place, plus they're building a monster CBOC in Kapolei now. It's going to be 70,000 square feet. And I mean, it's significant. So much is happening in a good way. My role in that work, rural health with the VA here in the Pacific, I oversaw the clinics, managed care.
Which is another very, very difficult thing. Again, you said, with your military experience, you could see the background of how, the VA, how they build and stuff like that. But also in Hawaii, knowing how, they do business and how they work, what are some of the challenges of like you said, you moved it all forward. You kind of talk about it like it's all nothing,
Well, let me make a comment that's real-time pertinent, and then let me go back a step or three. Permits. Okay. Honolulu, area for development and permits, the DPP, planning and permits, unbelievable. Permitting.
So get ready.
Permitting. And it's not just Honolulu. Some of the things we did on the neighbor islands, we had to dig wells. I mean, just permitting is a nightmare. But okay, what else is new? I mean, just read that in the paper.
Challenges everywhere, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like this. When I was at Tripler, one of the things that we did was we built a Fisher House, and I assume you're familiar with that. They're pretty universal to the VA and the military. Where
resources for families.
Zachary Fisher, 9 rooms, 9 families, no cost.
Right.
So they built a number of Fisher houses already, and actually we built one at Walter Reed when I was there. I'd had 4 tours at Walter Reed, 3 prior to coming to Tripler. But we said we wanted to build a Fish House. They said great idea. So they came and we scoped it all out and looked at it. It's going to cost 3 times more to build one here than anywhere else in the country. And it's just the movement of supplies, the cost. Right. I mean, welcome to Hawaii.
Right.
I mean, that the monetary aspects of it, clearly that's a challenge. No two ways about it. The quality control is a challenge because you don't always have the talented expertise available. And when you do find it, it's available. It's hard, but when you do find it, you're going to pay for it. And so, there are just construction here is really interesting. But when we looked at the state veterans home in Hilo, it was a cakewalk compared to what we had to do to get this one I'm currently working with and for. we started in Hilo. I came and I briefed there's a statewide governor appointed Veterans Council here with representatives from all over.
And they continuously meet about all sort of veterans interests.
Absolutely. And then there's an Oahu Council, a Maui Council, Kauai Council, and Big Island Council as well. And I came and met with the Oahu guys. I met with the state guys, and then I came over and met with the Oahu guys. And I said, look, if y'all will support us building this facility in Hilo, because it's on the neighbor islands, and the preponderance of veterans.
There's a lot of questions out there. That's always a question. Why'd they do it?
Why Hilo? Yeah. Well, because Hilo supported me. They wanted it. I mean, the city fathers, the Harry Kims, you name it.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted it, and everybody else was sort of indifferent about it. So I went, and HHSC is a neighbor island oriented corporation, where we had, 12 of our 15 facilities are on neighbor islands.
Right.
So it was Hilo, but I promised them if they'd support that, then our next effort for a second one would be on Oahu. And to honor that, in 2012, we had a brand new director of the Office of Veteran Services. Ron Hahn is his name. I mentioned him a moment ago from the testimony at the hearing.
Yeah, well known. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
leader in the
hey, you got it, David. Well, you know him. You've worked with him.
He's a superstar in my book.
Yeah, me too, for sure. He when he came on, he replaced a fella that had gone off to East Sudan, Greg Jackson, bless his heart, to do some good work. And I went down to visit with Ron, and we had a conversation and talked about Hilo and talked about a commitment for Oahu. And boy, Ron just jumped right on that. His job, he's running the cemeteries, and he's providing counseling, and he's involved in a lot of other veteran activities here, all sorts, suicide prevention, homeless, you name it. But he jumped right on this state veterans home idea for Oahu. And so with him championing that, we started off on a long episode. It took us, that was 2012 when we started.
10 years we're working on.
Going through the processes, getting just a little seed funding and doing the pre-apps. And it's a complicated process. We were fast-tracked in Hilo because there are 159 state veterans homes right now. In 2004, there were only 3 states that did not have a state veterans home. And so when we applied for the first one in Hilo, that put us, they bump you to the top of the list.
Because you hadn't had that resource available to your state yet.
You got it. So we skipped about a 4-year queue.
Wow.
And we were able to get right up to the top of the list with the Hilo home. Not the case with Oahu. We had to, go along, and we were trudging our way along. But, trying to get, there's a lot of credit. And I'm sorry if I failed to give credit where credit's due, but to our Washington supporters, especially Senator Hirano and Senator Schatz, they came through and sponsored a buyout on the whole state veterans home program. Let's do a one-time buy. Let's clean the list. And we were down at the bottom, but we were on the list. And by virtue of the fact that they pushed that through to move forward with the construction for all of the various applications, we were able to get this one going.
Yeah, that was a big move. That was a big move during that. That was a couple of years ago. I think
you got it.
Yeah.
We'd probably still be waiting if they hadn't managed to do that.
Yeah, that was amazing lift. That was something special, I think.
You bet. But anyway, so we got the money, and I won't drag it out. It's just it was a challenging process to locate it. Now, you'd think a state veterans home would be something a community would want to have. And by and large, that is true. However, where it's going to be in the community and who lives and what proximity to it, and it can get very complex.
How much traffic does it generate? Are you going to have parking? What's the noise level? Are we going to have ambulances around here? And then that's not permits. That's the city review, community review process. Neighborhood boards.
Yeah. And so we started out, wanted to put it at Leahi, and of all the properties in the Hawaii Health Systems Corporation, the only property they don't have fee simple ownership of is Leahi. That's owned by the university. and it's the way the bill was set up,
Mhm.
and it goes back to 96. And there are certain provisions that were made in there, negotiated provisions in
Sure.
order to get the bill through. And the university retained ownership of that property.
Mhm.
And we couldn't get, the university ultimately didn't follow through with that approach. We were looking at 3 stories on a couple of acres there. Next was IAEA, and that seemed promising at the time.
Now, were you running up against a clock?
Hey, this was Ron Hahn working this one now. I was a federal employee. As a federal employee, there are very, very specific limits on your level of involvement, if you would, in state activities.
Got you. Right.
You federal work over here, state work over there,
Right.
and
It's
we
you
could
can't mix
talk and-
pots because they're different financial, they're different,
You got it. Oh, yeah.
accounting processes. Gotcha.
yeah. So like I could go with Ron, and I invited him to join me for two HAH, Healthcare Association of Hawaii annual legislative planning meetings, and that was fine because I was doing that anyway as part of my VA work. And but no, Ron and with his team at that time carried the ball through that. And
So good, that's clear. So it's really partnership, and I think that's what it takes, and that's why I also say you're unique. Is what, how did your military experience help you to develop over here in Hawaii those partnerships? What was the?
Well, it's pervasive. It really is. It just starts like I figured it out very quickly when I got to Tripler, because I got there in July, I guess, and of course, Uniki came in September, and
right.
That brought people together.
Yeah,
I mean,
welcome
you
to
don't need
Hawaii,
me to tell
right?
you. I mean, holy.
And you were right in
moly.
the front of, so you got to meet like everybody, just sort of out of force. The emergency sort of brought you all together.
It was amazing and very, very positive, and so many different elements of it. I mean, all of the disaster elements. I mean, without me naming them
right
one by one, but that came together as a real huge, I think, step forward in partnering with the military, partnering, and the VA was there, of course, but the city, the Healthcare Association of Hawaii, certainly the governor's office, the health committee. I mean,
it is amazing. Hawaii does have an amazing, and other states I'm sure do as well, but there's so many unique sort of issues that Hawaii brings in emergency situations.
Oh yeah. So that was incredible. And we bonded in such a way that a series of relationships that exist still today really took place. I mean, mass cow operations at Tripler used to be almost notional, right? And I mean, you have to do 2 a year. One's on paper, one's real. But after that, when we did mass cow operations, I mean, it was real time. I mean, we're talking about site-specific ambulances, play acting.
And they're doing that. Yeah, that continues. That continues today with
absolutely
extra vigor. Yeah.
And it's all coordinated. And you see today, I mean, Tripler's even stepped up where they're now a level 2 trauma center, and that means all takers. That's right. I mean, there are certain things that can and will happen once a non-eligible or civilian patient goes to Tripler. But, once they're stabilized and all that situation is managed. So that's a nice partnership piece. And that's just Tripler. It's the same way with, I found a biggie for me was when I went to the VA, and 1,000 people work in the VA here, probably 1,200, 1,300 now. And I went to work there, and so I'm meeting and talking to people, and I'm going to go out because I'm going to be responsible for all these clinics. And so I'm getting ready to go out and start going to the clinics, and I go out there. And one of the early questions I ask them is, where do you guys fit with the FQHCs, the Federally Qualified Health Centers, or sometimes called CHCs, Community Health Centers? And they didn't know what I'm talking about. I said, wait a minute. You're here, you're on Maui, right? It's Kahului. You got a big CBOC, and you're not talking to the FQHC, which is a big FQHC on Maui with satellite clinics. They didn't even know they exist. They didn't know what an FQHC was.
Well, tell our viewers how it's.
Well, I mean, to me, this is an example of partnership. In healthcare today, and let me be 101 real quick.
Sure.
You have a lot of different echelons of things. Of course, you have, you got our queens, and we got, our HPH facilities and Capilani and Straub and Guakini and all. Let's call those teaching centers, medical centers, and there's research there. Tripler fits right in there, teaching graduate medical education and research. I mean, that's your tertiary level care.
Right.
And of course, then as ancillary to that, you have your community hospitals.
Right. That sort of that level that sort of
integrated. Yeah, and you look at Oahu, I mean, Wahiwa and Kahuku and so forth. But for the most part, most of the HHSC hospitals fit into that. Kauai vets, different Hanaka, you name it.
Small critical access hospitals. Critical access.
Yes, and we did get the critical access designations for them. You're absolutely right. The hospitals and the medical centers all have clinics that are feeders, of course, and they've built medical. I mean, you go to Hawaii Kai, there's a Queens and a Straub and you name it.
Yeah, they've done they've stretched out their arms to do.
And then of course there are private practitioners and medical groups that are affiliated with the centers. But if you look at that, you see the patient and you go into the clinic, and maybe you're going to get some care at the clinic. Maybe you end up in a community hospital for some level of care. Maybe you're moved or go even directly to a medical center. And that's sort of the continuum of care, if you would. But in reality, it's not at all, because we're a state with an island state, and we're the definition of remote.
Right.
And even on some parts of Oahu. And we mentioned critical access hospitals, but a key component of healthcare in our country today and in Hawaii is the CHC, the Community Health Center, or the FQHC, sometimes called Federally Qualified Health Center. And what that amounts to, it's a HRSA, designated program, health services agency, where an applicant goes in and sets up a proposal and has a local board with 51% of the board members have to be local, and they make application and they get funding. And
then they have to have a certain population that they serve, and then and then they can specialize as much as they want depending upon what the need is out there and the ability to hire and bring folks in. So it's another level. It's that sort of a layer of safety net, as it were, that's federally sponsored by, federally sponsored sort of community, where you have the dentist sometimes or
exactly.
Gotcha.
And
community center.
I mean, their participants that's your Medicaid group, or we don't have any insurance group. And that's the population they're going to serve. So the safety net is a great term when you conceptualize of that.
And it's much better if we're utilizing that to its fullest rather than, the hospital, ER.
Hey, I mean, Maui is an example. At one point we had there was some funding. There are always funding issues, but there were some funding issues with the large FQHC there on Maui. And they had to shut down operations for a short period of time. Our ER was overrun. I mean, it was it was mass hysteria in the ER. You just overwhelmed. I mean,
so there's one entity over here in Maui that's just frazzled, and the other one's like, okay, we don't have enough patients or resources to be able to. So some kind of partnership sounds like is someone with vision could see that. Sure.
And so here you are in relatively remote areas, and you got CBOCs now. The VA is doing the outreach in their community-based outpatient clinics, and you got the Fed government, and Pat DeLeon and Senator Inouye insisted, and they managed to put an FQHC on every island in Hawaii. And you got the FQHCs who are seeing the more Medicaid, we don't have insurance elements of the population, and the CBOCs and the FQHCs weren't communicating. And there's a lot of services that the FQHCs offer, the CBOCs don't. And
the flip side of that.
Yeah. And so it was a natural partnership. And we built that partnership throughout Hawaii. We built that partnership throughout American Samoa, Guam, and the CNMI as well. So that's really worked out just great.
Now, tell me how you feel about that. Okay, when something from conception to then, materialize, I mean, you're looking back over your career, what is something that you're most proud of that you've been able to sort of bring to pass, as it were, as a leader in your various positions?
I don't think it's right. And I really can't take personal credit for anything, because everything we've
a
always done as
gracious
team,
leader would say, all right, we can talk about you a little bit.
No, it's more just, it's teamwork,
Right.
and bringing things to fruition. I think one of the biggest things that I've been involved in, I'll say it like that, here in Hawaii is, and you mentioned it earlier, the critical access hospital. Our small hospitals on the neighbor islands were dying. I mean, and they were just outrageously expensive, and the annual subsidy was ridiculous.
It was unsustainable.
No way, man. You just couldn't do it. And when we got involved a little bit in the new concept of the critical access hospital in about 2000, and started figuring it out, and that's when we started putting together those applications. And I think we ended up with 8 critical access hospitals. I'm counting Kahuku, which we took over. That also got critical access designation. But because of that, and the word you used is the best term, is sustain. We're able to sustain the operations. They still require subsidies. They're all staffed with state employees. The state employees have these very, very challenging collective bargaining agreements.
Good catch.
are difficult to manage and work with because of the work rules and
it's complex. It's really hard to sort of navigate that. And now I can imagine, even now, with some of the challenges of actually even finding folks on top of that, and the folks that are working that you have now.
Yeah.
So are you seeing that again? You may not be directly working with that right now, but how have you seen that sort of that landscape change of the having needed?
It's worrisome. It really is. I think we see some, again, I want to be careful to phrase my comments so I'm not trying to sound too derogatory here, but if you look at the state psych hospital, okay, over there in Kaneohe,
sure,
you see an example of the issues that collective bargaining can create.
Right.
Now, the first thing, if I were responding to that for the union, the first thing I would say, and I'd be right when I said it, is, well, we didn't do anything wrong. It's management that doesn't read the contracts, and it's management that doesn't follow the rules. And that's right. That is true.
Yeah. Everybody's got to take their ownership in what's happening.
It's very, very true. That's an element of it. Now, conversely, the levels of complexity and detail are overwhere's in large part. And so when you take a state agency like DOH, and here's the pandemic and everything else is coming up and going on, and some of the activities they might have taken that are necessary for collective bargaining success when you open a new facility don't get done in a timely fashion. Then you start to see the situation unfold that we now see.
That's important to note. I think it's good to highlight that there's important things as you start with new people. Sort of, you have to install some sort of vision or culture to wrap around. How do you, what is your understanding of that? I mean, in the military morale, you had to build around something, a goal, a mission, or whatever it is. Was that helpful for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, commander's planning guidance in the military. First thing you do when you take command of a unit is you stand up in front of all your, in our case, all your soldiers, and you share your vision with them, a common vision to be shared by all. And you give your basic tenets out, and you continue to post that and practice that. And it brings something that's very important to that type of leadership role, and that's continuity.
Right.
People begin to learn what to expect.
Yeah.
And if you are consistent in your vision and in your tenets of how you're going to operate, the organization comes together nicely. Obviously, not error. I mean, some errors occur with some leaders, and therefore wheels fall off the wagon.
Right. But relieved of duty, conduct unbecoming. They find you see that you kind of from an outsider, you don't really know how that works and what that looks like, and it's the military's way that they, where other ones it happens in a business, an office somewhere, this is because of that, the visibility, I think, of and I guess accountability of the officers in the military, there's just such a high, there's you have to be good all the time, and again,
Yeah.
successful too.
Oh
you can't-
yeah, and command is the most precarious of all, but it's the best of all. But I mean, and we see difficult situations. I mean, just put Fat Leonard at the top of it and go downhill from there. But how can things like that happen? Well, they do happen.
Right.
And that's part of what happens when a military begins to founder a little bit and lose its way.
Right.
And I think we're in the middle of a lot of that right now. I won't get philosophical on it. I just think that a lot of the priorities are somewhat misconstrued at this moment, and I'm sure that makes it very hard and very confusing for everybody from the private to the general.
Yeah, because what's the mission? What are we after here? Yeah, because I remember, I was a young gunner, in Columbia, Fort Jackson, and getting my, hey, we were pitching. I think my drill sergeant even said he called the guy we're after was Ivan. So we were, we were geared towards protecting, kind of what was ours, and maybe even then there was still some. Hey, what are we doing? Like when I went to Somalia, hey, what are we doing here? There's maybe that was starting to begin. But yeah, it's always a challenge in any organization, without mission, they're struggling to find recruiting, to recruit to fill all their spots.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We're supposed to learn how to close and kill the enemy, and we're spending more time on what kind of shoes you're wearing. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway,
well, it has changed, and the military has changed. And again, I don't know. My son's in right now; he's in the Air Force, but that's maybe because it has changed so much. That there's people not, they're not sure what they're getting into.
Yeah, very sure. Yeah, and indeed, a lot of competing factors. Well, let me come back though.
Sure.
And say, talk about recruitment and staff, and I think at this point we're going through something here in Hawaii that's new and different. And as you just merely look at the information put out by Healthcare Association of Hawaii and the advertiser, and you see right now our hospitals are full. We've got significant shortages in our staffing. I mean, even today, I think there's somewhere between 400 and 600 off-island staffers that are making up for the shortages. And here we are, and I say we, OVS, Office of Veteran Services, Ron Hahn, and he's got a small team of DOD, DAGs, and myself. I'm the healthcare coordinator.
Yeah, the hospitals have lots more apparatus to be able to do the work that they do.
Oh yeah, and we're closing on this construction piece now. I want to say it's a very important step that has occurred in our process that I haven't mentioned yet. Was initially HHSC, Hawaii Health Systems Corporation, was involved in this project, but then there were some leadership changes and that fell out. We've got some really strong leadership here on Oahu within HHSC. It's called the Oahu Regional Healthcare System, HHSC, some really strong leadership. And we got together with them, and we had a lot of support from a gentleman, Ryan Amini, the health chair in the House, and teaming up with them with Oahu Region and OVS. And Ryan put in a bill, and it moved all the way through. I mean, we got the thing all the way through to the governor and signed into law that OVS, DOD, Department of Defense, Office of Veteran Services, we can build a facility, but don't know how to run it. They don't have. They don't have.
They're not a healthcare organization.
Do that. HHSC, Oahu region, they got Malahia, they got Leahi, and they're overseeing Kahuku. They know how to run a long-term care facility. And this teamwork came together so nicely with the bill that the oversight responsibility, think of it like ownership. I mean, these are state agencies, but
where they have budgetary responsibility and sort of, to make sure that that they follow all the responsibilities that the VA has for completion, et cetera, or operation. And
yeah, you bet. Well, two guys, Derek Alcala and Sean Sonata in particular, Scott Kwai is the third one, working with Ron and myself and our small team, have now a piece of legislation signed and in place that will move the entire project from DOD to Oahu region HHSC not later than the 30th of June 2023. And that's huge.
Yeah.
That makes a big difference, because now instead of, I'm the only healthcare guy on our team,
right?
But now we've got the HHSC leadership team that have joined us, and so we've really got prowess and strength in our work. And I say work. This project fully funded. We broke ground on April 11, 2021. And I came on board. I'm a personal services contractor with the Department of Defense, OBS. I came on board in April 26 of 2021. And we had going through, NAN Inc. is our primary contractor, and working with a local architect firm, MGA.
Right.
We were looking at 11 April of 2023 for beneficial occupancy, our completion date, if you would. And right now we're right above 70% construction complete. We're under budget, we're on time. And now we've gotten hit with a lot of the problems that are national and international in terms of equipment shortages and transportation. So our contractor, NAN Inc., has had to fall back. And so we're the primary concern, it's elevators, it's walk-in freezers, you name it. You could get it in a couple of weeks, then it's a couple of months. And one of the key components of our facility is the electrical switch. And that darn thing is going to push us back 13 months. So
you can't build until that's laid out. And
no, you can't finish the facility until you get the climate control, and along with all the equipment that you're ordering, to get it installed and get it working and get the warranty.
Yeah, because you can't have. He's got all that stuff. He's got to rent. And if it comes in piecemeal, and it's. But you know what? I think this is a valuable lesson. I think that maybe again you bring to the table. As I think the same thing with the rail. If there's some clarity of why there's some delay, again, maybe the rail has more complexity, but I think people just want to know, like, hey, what's going on?
Well, that's exactly right. And when we first learned of this, of course, nobody was happy about it. We were pretty unhappy and dismayed about it, but we ran it to ground, we did our due diligence, and we worked with our contractors to see this is reality. This is not just here in Hawaii.
Right.
The same thing is happening to a number of different state veterans homes that are currently under construction across the country, and other projects. So
it's not because it's not because the contractor, like, hey, they totally bailed, and no, I didn't get my staffing right, and I didn't have my equipment.
No, nothing like that.
Right.
So as soon as we became aware of this, we put out a major press release on the 2nd of September and just said, hey, look, here's what's going on, here's what's happening, here's what our projections are. And that was very positive, because although the advertiser picked up on that and did an article the next day, it was more understanding and revelation of explaining where we are and where we think we're going to be. And so
news. And tell us about, as you're a public figure, again, you've served in different, you've had to get up in front of folks. How does the what is it called, the coconut wireless here in Hawaii, I think they call it, how for people who are coming over here to do business or to do work, what are some tips for folks if they want to kind of make it work for them?
Well,
communication.
I think that the community involvement is a key component of this whole thing. I really do. And for example, one of the many things that we're doing is me talking with you today. This gives us an opportunity for those that are interested in your programs to get a little more information out there, let people know what's going on. And especially in our case, this is another way of saying thank you to our veterans. Hey, a lot has been done in 30 years, but we can do more, and we are going to do more.
Right.
And significant care is going to be available in the future that's not currently available. But when I say community involvement, I've had several opportunities now to go out to West Hawaii and speak to some of the different community clubs and entertain, questions and that we got a lot of community involvement, a lot of community support. Ron makes a very big case of presenting and updating to various veteran groups, throughout the state, because this is a state veterans home. It's not an Oahu veterans home.
Right. It's important because that we, I know in Hilo, they took folks from all of the different islands. It's a state home. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the breakout, we got about 117,000 veterans in the state. About 85,000 of those are on Oahu. Probably, we think around 23.5 thousand of those are 65 and over. Mm-hmm. And being old is not a qualification for this state veterans home. It's a skilled nursing facility. So you don't have to be old. I mean, often that comes with skilled nursing requirements, but not always.
Right.
But just getting the word out and community involvement. So new people coming in, I think, there's more to it than just talking to your peers. There's more to it than just talking to the people with whom you're doing business. I think it's very important to be talking to the community in which you are doing business and trying to get their perspective and their involvement. Right. That can help you a lot, or it can really slow you down if you don't understand it. So
taking that, it is difficult. There's sometimes if you want feedback, that's great, but then you have to be able to do something with it.
There you go.
You have to, because there's a lot of information coming at you as an executive, I imagine, and you're like, okay, how do I prioritize all of this and make it work and have the most impact with the folks I'm working with? And
well, that's exactly right. Another perhaps smaller example, though, is when you build a facility, a state facility here in Hawaii, there's a law that requires, as part of the construction costing package that you put together, that a small percent, 1% of the state contribution to construction goes to the State Foundation for Culture and Arts. Okay.
Any building in Hawaii.
Any state building, and it's in our case, it's a $98.4 million facility. 53.7 million is from the state, and 44.7 million is from the Fed. So it's a combined effort, Fed and state. Usually the Fed would pay more, but we had to get an additional state appropriation due to those delays I mentioned to you earlier, the site delays, and then on top of that, the pandemic. But anyway, so the state contribution goes. So we've had the chance to sit down and really work with the foundation people, and they're just great. They do two things. One, they do some major outside work for your facility. And two, then they do interior art and work with you.
That's wonderful. That's the Hawaiian the Veterans Home in Hilo had that local art, and again, local.
Yeah. You got it.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's really great. The interior piece doesn't really get going until the facility is close to getting ready to open, not open, but in the process, completed and getting ready to open. But the exterior piece, that has to be done in concert with construction. So the foundation has a process, and we formed a committee. I chair the committee. Ron deferred that to me, and that's great. I'm having a lot of fun with it. But we reach out and we get various people. We've got a member of our engineering team on it. We've got a member of a mainland architectural firm that does the interior of the building on it. We've got a local Vietnam veteran who's on it. We've got a member of the local architecture team on it. And we've got a physician who works at the VA Center for Community Living Center located in Tripoli. That's a 60-bed long-term care facility.
Okay.
VA has in Tripoli. And so it's a diverse group that comes together to work on the art and, figure out what are we going to do? What
Right.
can we do? What can we do to make this special?
Because it's a
And
very
so-
special, architecture anyway, with the very sort of, private rooms and expansive meeting spaces and things. Really a special treat for the veterans. It just seems like that's what it was supposed to be for.
Well, it is. And it's this community-based participation that makes it good. And what I'll just comment quickly to finish that point is that what we've decided is we're going to do exterior murals. We've got some wall facings 2 stories high,
Okay.
and buttressed in the front and on the side. And we've been through a process of interviewing 10 different artists. We've selected one. The commission is contracting with him now. I was out there 2 weeks ago with him and a couple of others and walking the facility. And we're going to do some magnificent murals and 2-3-dimensional glass lighted at night, bringing in the theme of veterans and Hawaii and mountain to sea. And it's going to be something else. It
Right, 'cause
really
again,
is.
this pulls veterans from all that whole distributed, veteran area that the Pacific has. So again, it's a sort of a place of refuge. Will there be services for veterans outside who aren't living there?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that makes it special. But again, it's 130,000 square feet, as you mentioned.
Mhm.
It's private rooms with private baths, 120 of them. It's
Wow.
skilled nursing, but it's a dual mission facility. Not only do we have the long-term care, skilled nursing care available, but it's also going to be rehabilitation. And we're putting a major effort into rehabilitation. And wait list is a huge problem here in Hawaii.
Absolutely.
Where we see the patient go into the hospital, community medical center, acute patient, gets better, can't be placed. Non-acute care patients tying up acute care beds. That'll help. This will help the wait list. And especially in the rehabilitation concept, where we can bring in maybe like the 100-day Medicare veterans and help them get back. And I mean, I'm talking not just physical therapy, but occupational therapy and speech therapy, and really trying to help people get back where they can have a quality of life at home and not have to be in an institutionalized setting. And lastly, I mentioned that there are 159 state veterans homes in the country. Only 3 of them have adult daycare. One is in Hilo.
Okay.
We knew there was a need for it in Hilo, so we put it in there, irregardless of the fact that hardly nobody else was doing it.
Right.
And it's been great. And we're going to do adult daycare here on Oahu.
Again, another service for veterans. How large?
Yes, we won't open that up at the same time that the facility opens for patients. We're going to go ahead and get ramped up and get our core work done with the long-term care and the rehab. I would estimate perhaps year 2 or 3, we'll begin to open the adult daycare though. And that's sorely needed. That's just something you can't hardly find. Right.
And again, it just becomes a part of that community up there. It sounds like Kapolei just embraced the idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're just great. And we're working with the State Housing and Finance Development Corp. They actually own the land. It had a state veterans home has to be built on state land, and they're a state agency and they own the land. So we've worked out a 99-year lease. We've signed the lease. Villages of Kapolei Homeowners Association we're in their area. We're working with them now. We haven't finalized our agreement with them because of this handoff that's taking place between DOD and HHSC, but we will. It will be part of the Kapolei Homeowners Association in that context too. And so it's really fitting in very nicely. One of the things that will help us, and I'm being parochial when I think of the State Veterans Home when I say this, is we think, and I feel comfortable saying it, that there's a lot of healthcare talent and capability among the folks who live in West Oahu, and specifically in Kapolei. And either A, they're not exercising that talent because they just won't put up with the rush hour traffic. Or B, they are, and they're driving hours and hours back and forth every day, and we're going to open a facility in their backyard.
I think that's that'll I think that, what they call folks who live in townies. I think those folks out there, they like their little space out there. They don't have to go rush and
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, look, I know we're nearing the end of our time, and I just want to say that they're really, I'm honored to be able to have this responsibility to work with the center and the building that we're building this facility. But the group that I'm working with, again, with Ron, and it tears down in DOD from General Hara all the way down with General Metz and Ron. But our partners in HHSC just have been fantastic, the leadership there. And the legislators and Ryan Yamani and many, many others. I mean, there's so many people have a big piece of this. And then we've already mentioned the Washington support that we got with the funding. I mean, it takes a village, And
you got to keep, and you got to keep a village, everyone in their position, lift where you are,
Yeah, so we're really lucky. This is going to happen. It's taken us a little longer than we would have liked, but there's going to be nothing else like it in Hawaii. There's not going to be another state veterans home like this anywhere in our country.
I think it'll be the flagship of veterans homes for sure, hands down.
It is. And our veterans deserve it.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. And we've got some capability left over with the VA, so we're scratching around now and looking at a third home, seeing what we might put together, perhaps on Maui. So
I keep hearing that whisper. Of Maui. So with this kind of success that you're having now, that's that's within the realm of possibilities. Again, it's going to take that willing team though to kind of keep fighting up, as it were.
You got it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wish we had enough. We could put one on every island. It's just not quite really feasible, because if you're going to operate one of these as a self-sustaining facility, there's certain sizing models that have to be met. And small is not necessarily good in this business, as you well know.
Well, scale is there's some pluses to size and things that just has to all kind of work in the math.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Wow. Well, listen, thank you.
No,
Dave.
this has been my pleasure. I could do another couple hours with this and go back and explore but this has really been cool. Like I said, sort of a really unique thing. I think Hawaii is lucky to have you here, is pulling for our veterans, and thank you for your service. And as we get closer to the build, we'll get out there and we'll do some live podcasts. We'd love to.
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to have some veterans
and have them tell their story. Love to have that.
Oh, love it. Absolutely love it. Right. We just can't do enough. That's right. Well, Thank you so much, Dave.
You bet.
God
Tom,
bless
thank
you.
Thank you so much. And until next time, aloha.
We'll be here for you.
All right.
Aloha.
Make sure to subscribe to Hawaii Boss and follow us on social media at Hawaii Boss Podcast at the links in the description. We'll see you soon in the boss's office.